Hi everyone, it's Jerry. This is Game 15, World Chess Championship 2024. I'm just kidding. World Chess Championship is over, and we have a new champion in Gukesh D, the youngest to ever do it at the age of 18. Let's have a look at one of his games from just a couple months back. Played at the Olympiad, an excellent Kingside attack in this one. He has the black pieces here against the 2023 Icelandic Champion Vignir Vatnar Stefansson. All right, in this one, we see a very early h6, cutting out any pin lines. Important to not treat knight f3 and knight c3 in the same way. If you respond to knight c3 with h6, you would be neglecting the center, allowing white to form a trio, and this knight will soon have to find a new home. All right, in this one, knight f3, e4 is not a threat. You can afford to play h6. White goes for a kingside fianchetto, check inserted to inconvenience white somewhat, bishop in the way of the knights and the queen. Bishop g2, both sides castle, duo challenged, and these strong center points now both reinforced with a pawn, a rook. Knights connected, bishop improves, space grab on the queen side, and from here, knight c3 is played. Knight goes to its favorite square. This move sparks a certain continuation. Gukesh sees knight c3 move as an opportunity to take on c4. The queen's eyes are obstructed once the knight is on c3. He meets knight c3 with the capture, with the idea to next pivot on the newly opened d5 square. He has this idea to go hunting for the dark square bishop. We see this imbalance in this game, knight for dark square bishop exchange. Now there's this question then, why does white maybe not put this knight somewhere else? Why not go to d2? It's not your favorite square, but you're at least staying trained on c4 directly. And from d2, just as you would be from c3, you're supporting e4. A downside with having the knight on d2 is that this guy lacks a couple moves. It's restricted, doesn't have d2 or c1 to fall back to. It's vulnerable now, and depending on how aggressive black wants to be, black could here by force track that dark square bishop. g5, very committal move. Bishop e3, knight g4, black will get that exchange in there. Now, if this is not up your alley, playing g5, this super weakening move, do know you could always play within the structure and at least kick this bishop back to e3, and this interferes with the e4 push. In this game, the knight goes to its favorite square. Black picks up the c4 pawn. White's reply here, knight d2, that's considered best. Looking to simply regain the pawn. A question I have for myself in a position like this is, now that this pawn has made the capture, white has a central majority. What happens if it starts to roll right away and in the process take away the knight d5 jump? How to respond to e4 here? Considered best is a4. If white takes on a4 here, this queen is overloaded. Two jobs, and there would be knight takes e4 here. This would be an excellent exchange of pawns for black. White has given up a big center pawn, an e pawn, for just a rook pawn. Not a wise continuation for white. After this a4 move, can be a follow-up b5. It may be the case white does not get that pawn back. White gets the pawn back right away in this one with knight to d2. Black can now forget about trying to hang on to c4. The c pawn would be captured. Consistent follow-up now. Knight d5. The knight's going to capture the bishop. If you don't want to see that, If you're taking this knight here, you're not getting the pawn back. You're just straightening out black structure. Not a good way forward for Team White. Simple recapture. Knight for bishop exchange in this one. Where do we go from here? There's a bunch of maneuvering that occurs in this game, especially now with the new structure, new pieces that we're working with. There's a question here with this guy. What do we do with Mr. Unopposed dark square bishop? There's almost always an argument to be made for placing that unopposed piece on the longest diagonal. But what may be more appropriate in this case are these diagonals here pointing towards the white king, especially because there is a weakened kingside structure. Now, of these two diagonals, which of the two is more attractive? Maybe this one right here. This is the diagonal he eventually goes to. Why do I think maybe this is the better diagonal? Well, it does observe, however indirect, white's weakest pawn, this isolated pawn on h2. All right, let's get some piece improvements in here. The bishop, the light square bishop here, does a good job of taming white's strongest piece, this well-supported knight on e5. There is a half-open file for white. He's hopping to it. Gukesh is out of any pin with the king on h8 here. No g-pawn pin. Rook c8, hinting at c5, in general breaking down white pawns on dark squares when you have this unopposed dark square bishop. A good idea. White says not so fast. Push here, takes, problem here. Bishop d6, queen e7. This guy's just out of the way of the rook. Knight a4, eyeing up the c5 square. So what is black going to do with these knights occupying these excellent outposts? This next move, rook c7, when I initially was going through this game, I thought to myself, okay, that's, nice defensive move where, we're anticipating this excellent knight post, putting pressure on a base point. Rook on this square, convenient defender. There is, in fact, an aggressive idea behind this move as well, which will soon be revealed. Knight goes to d3. What may be prepped, now that the knight is on d3, I should note, is this quick e4 and e5 idea. All right, not so fast. Rook c1, knight d5, a3 cuts out any piece jump on b4. And from here, we now have f6. So what's going on with f6? Well, a few things. f6 cuts out the knight e5 jump. We got control over that square. f6 is also supporting a g5 move. Ties in well with the dark square bishop, a g-pawn advance, targeting a flank pawn here, targeting a doubled pawn, frequently a good idea. Also, we're creating a path for this bishop to now activate. A lot going on with that single pawn move. From here, queen d2. What are we doing now as black against this threat? Well, Gukesh ignores it. He's sacrificing this pawn. He continues here with g5. It's important to note that the queen from d2 is not just targeting the pawn. She's securing f4. What's right around the corner for white is a central push, e4. So if you want it all here as black, if you want to hang on to the material, I should say, and play a move like rook f7, allowing the queen to defend, there's e4. And where does this knight go? Has to hit the reverse button. This feels awkward. The rook almost feels like it's going to be trapped. If you go to these squares, the pawn could still be captured. Gukesh prepared to meet this e4 move with a forward move. And the way to do that is to increase the pressure on f4. e4 here, there's knight takes, f4. The a pawn is picked up. Bishop improves, targeting the knight, the queen back to a central location. She says, mission accomplished, I'm up a pawn. More regrouping here. Queen sliding over, rook sliding over, rook c8, c7, g7. It's not done yet. Still a nice defensive role, but aggressive intentions as well. Queen e2, tough to make improvements, I must say, for the white side. Much easier for black. These guys coiled up. When will there be a capture? Might there be a push? White continues to kind of have to guess. Notice releasing the tension, playing here as white. If you release the tension, guess who would be asking for trouble after h takes? This guy right here, that weakest pawn. There will be coordinated pressure on that point in a blink. From here, rook on c to e1, backing off with the bishop. No rush here for white. Notice the patience. Bishop improvement, backing off like this. From d6, you may be running into a timely knight e4 with tempo. When it's on d6, it's unprotected. Now on a protected square. The bishop, the light square bishop, backing off as well. Nice improvements here, getting out of the rook's way. Possible g4 right around the corner. Queen to d1. And from here, we now have a kick. This knight, where are you going? Considered best in this position, it's suggesting a knight to e4. I'm not sure exactly why that move was not played. In the game, knight b3 is played in response to knight e4 or b3. Gukesh can reply in the same way with g4. Ends up deciding on the b3 square. In comes g4. Now, what was accomplished by giving this knight a kick? This square is now a bit more sensitive. There's only one defender. I want to point out that if you don't play b6 here and instead try g4 right now, you don't have enough support over this pawn. White can take in this way. And if you're taking the knight can recapture and the queen can stay as the defender of the bishop. So what's gained here by playing b6, you're softening up the defense of d3. Now, after the move in the game g4, white cannot take on this square. In the game, bishop g2 is played. That is the only move, the best move. If white tries the capture now, in the end, what would we have? An overloaded queen. We saw this earlier with the queen on c2 trying to defend a4 and e4. Another overloaded situation for the queen. Not a good situation for white. Black wins a piece from here, capturing the knight, and then the bishop. All right, this guy, in short, on g4 is poison. Bishop g2 from here. Here, Gukesh plays queen h5. Very aggressive move, opposite that white king pinning the h-pawn. Computer suggests, considers best, h5, h4, h3, controlling some more light squares, paving the way for a bishop e4 move in some cases. Queen h5 in this game. And now this is where white ends up blundering, ends up playing queen to d2 here. The best move in this difficult spot for white is to improve this worst piece. Computer is suggesting knight b to c1, drifting over in this direction in some cases. Queen d2 played here. Why is that move maybe played? Well, I believe white still has his eye here on advancing in the center. The queen is back to supporting that f4 square, but at the same time, this pawn is no longer pinned and can now advance, does advance in this game with g3. There's a mate in one threat. What are you going to do about that? In the game, it is f takes g3. Some other move allowing this pawn to live for the moment, that's not going to end well. This would soon lead to mate if you're playing h3. Bishop e4, top move. Bishop takes bishop, game over. f3, you could still take, and yet again, there's this idea to crash through on h3. It's a mating attack. In this game, f takes g3, rook takes g3. Look at this third rank pressure. e4 from here. We don't have to react to this threat. Rook improvement, 2 rooks now planted in white's camp. Now there is this idea of rook h4 and rook h2, game over. What is white supposed to do about this? This bishop is pinned. This pawn is also pinned. Any bishop move, you go here, game over. You go to these squares, the bishop just gets captured. In the game, what does white play? He goes with queen to e2. It pins this rook. If rook h4 were trading queens, that would save white. What happens if white, instead of queen e2, takes this knight? Well, black would get the piece right back, target the queen, the knight, and if white in this position is trying to hang on to the material, there would already be a mating sequence here. A beautiful sequence with all these pieces swarming around. You can afford to sacrifice the queen. This is a checkmate in 7. This would be a checkmate in 7 from here. Let's see what that looks like. Queen takes h2, move number 1. Only reply. 2. Only reply. 3. Only reply. 4. Couple options. Queen here is just going to be mate right away. Number 5, only move. Number 6, only move. And from here we have the pleasant pick of rook, either rook, capture of the queen. I'm going with that one for whatever the reason. 2 rooks gunning down the king there, sandwiched between his own rooks. Ball game. All right. We do not have the capture on this square here. No pawn takes knight. It is queen to e2. One other detail, if white steps over to f4 to defend this point, yeah, you're not interfering with rook to h4 here. There's going to be a problem now on h2. No good way to defend that point. All right, in this game it is queen to e2. f4 now collapses. And big problem, this unopposed bishop, direct sight of that weakest pawn from here. What are you going to try? Bishop f3 is played here. And anything else? What else could be tried here? Let's say this knight tries to improve instead. We would have another cool queen sacrifice, a much simpler continuation. Queen takes h4, rook check, and mate. With all this material coiled up here on the Kingside, plenty of cases where you can sacrifice the queen. Knight c1, not played. Bishop f3 here, and after just one more move, rook takes bishop. White resigns. Just won a piece, and you can't win it back. Queen takes rook, queen takes h2 would be there for mate. Up a piece, black here. The attack continues. Good moment to simply resign. So, what did you think of this one? I really liked this rook maneuver by Gukesh. Rook c8, c7, g7, g3, and in the end, pulls off the final move. Rook takes bishop, forcing resignation. Excellent kingside attack, this one here. Feel free, as usual, to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed it, and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care.